I have a little bit of a different topic to talk about today, and that is dealing with the stress of a tax office audit. Now, not many people talk about this, but it is a big deal for people who are going through an audit. There's a huge amount of uncertainty about what's going to happen to them. Are they going to have to go bankrupt? Are they going to be able to afford this? Can they get out of it? Why me? And quite a few different factors, and it can be quite difficult for people to deal with. When I first picked working in tax law, I thought, it's going to be stale. There's not going to be much emotion involved. I thought that's something that's reserved for family lawyers, who go through all of these different experiences. But I found very quickly that tax can be the same, especially for small business owners who are going through an audit and just completely uncertain about where they stand. And there are a couple of reasons why that happens. And some of it is to do with the way the tax office runs the audit program. Typically, it tends to be a very huge information gathering exercise. Auditors will do that. They'll ask for everything under the sun. And so the person receiving that will look at this massive list and think that, their whole life is being probed. And then on top of that, the auditors will also ask for that information often quite quickly, or give the impression that they need it quickly, or perhaps even give the impression that, well, you should have this, right? So it shouldn't be any problem for you to provide it. And a lot of people won't necessarily have that. They might be asked for minutes of meetings of their company. They're thinking, well, I have a shop or whatever it might be. I don't have minutes of meetings with myself. And so there are all of these different kind of factors that people go through. I think the best way of dealing with it is to look at it kind of in context and understand what's going on first. Because it's when you can get a grasp of the situation accurately that you can kind of move forward. People go through stages like, I can talk to the auditor, maybe they can help me, this, that, the other. At the end of the day, the auditor has a job to do, and they don't get to decide how much tax you pay necessarily. They just follow the internal procedures and protocols. If they wanted you to be given the opportunity to pay zero tax, they couldn't do that. They don't have the power, quite simply, to do that. They're sitting there thinking, okay, I have to be able to justify myself in the decision that I'm making. If anyone asks me, I've got to be able to say. And that triggers kind of an element of conservatism on their part, which doesn't really help the taxpayer. So I'll give you an example. Businesses that sometimes are not making a lot of money might not always have the best record keeping, for example. And the tax office sometimes will pounce on that and say, well, you don't have good records, so we're going to estimate how much you made. And they have on their website a list of benchmarks. And so they say, well, if you're in this industry, then you're definitely making this much money, which is not really how it works in practice, because then any sensible person will just go to the website and say, this is the highest profit margin thing out there. I'll just run it and I'll automatically make that much, It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way, but when the tax office administers the law, they assume that it works that way. And that puts tremendous stress on people because they're often not doing as well as the tax office thinks that they're doing. And that means that they end up having to pay tax on money that they never made. And the way the law works is you have to prove that you're right. And proving you're right if you don't have the best records is very difficult to do. You can't just say, oh, you guys are wrong. Telling the tax office they're wrong is almost a complete waste of time because they need to make a decision on how much you owe. Telling them that their figure is wrong does nothing for you and it does nothing for them they still have to fill the box in with the number. You've helped them to no degree at all when you've done that. So there's sort of that element of understanding, you know, where the tax office is coming from. And then there's also just understanding your own position. So you need to sit down and say, okay, this is probably what I can do, and this is probably the position, and then you have to plan accordingly. That's really all you can do. It's not worth really spending a lot of time on emotional things with an auditor, because they can't take those things into account in their decisions anyway. People will say, oh, I relied on an accountant, or this, that, or the other. Those things are fine and they might be true. But at the end of the day, does it help the auditor fill in the number on the box of how much you owe? Probably not. It doesn't inform that at all. So I think probably the best thing that you can do is to just try to say, well, I need to work out how much I owe, why, and I need to be able to prove it. Now, unfortunately, the way the law works, and it's not a bug, it's a feature of the system, is that the tax office is right unless you prove otherwise. The tax office is the one that's doing the investigation. The tax office is the one that decides the outcome. They're the judge, jury, and the executioner, unfortunately. In the later stages, you can get to the courts, but for the most part, and for the majority of cases, they hold that particular position. So you need to kind of, realize and accept that that's how it is. It's unfortunate, but that's how it is. And when you look at it that way, it can kind of refine the way that you need to deal with it. Another thing you take into account when you're thinking about these things is that the tax office has picked on you for a reason, and it's not to do with any attribute of you personally. It's to do with something in your data which has triggered the system. It might be that you're showing insufficient profits. It might be that they've picked up something from somewhere else showing that you've received some money and they were expecting it to be in your return. It's not there. And so when an auditor is appointed, they're appointed because the computer has told them that there's something going on with you. And they need to then check to see if there is. It could be a superannuation audit. Someone's called up and said, look, I didn't get my super. Either way, the reason why you're being audited or checked is because somewhere along the line, someone or something, like a computer, thinks that something's missing, something's wrong. And so you are on the back foot to start off with. That's unfortunately the case. And that's why I think, focusing your energy on working out what the correct answer is probably the most important thing that you can do, because that will hold true, and that's what will help you. You need that energy to be able to help you do other things in your life too. You can't be just thinking about your taxes all the time. And the person at the tax office has so many cases to work through, and you're just one of them. They have deadlines over there, they need to get audits finished, and at the end of the day, a lot of the time they'll finish an audit quickly, but with a terrible result. If you don't give the information, they'll just say, look, I'm going to guess, and I don't want to look bad, so I'm going to guess a high number. Bang. So the audit's done, and you can't complain that you're still under audit, but now you have this terrible result to deal with. So I think it does require very focused attention, which is really the best that you can do. Sometimes you'll get an auditor that's great, sometimes you'll get one that's terrible, and sometimes you'll get one that's in between. There's a bit of a luck of the draw there. But the truth is the truth, and that's the way it is. Um, the cards might be stacked against you, but knowing that you can devise kind of the right strategy, which is just the best that you can do, and just try to make the best out of the situation. So it's not really easy, and it's easy for someone like me to sit here and just say these things, but everyone's experienced kind of difficulties and challenges, right? Um, and you know, myself included. So do many other people, and this is just another one of those, that you have. And hopefully, at the very least, maybe you can get something out of it. You can learn from it. You can benefit in some way. But yeah, I think you can't really, let it get you down as such, because that's not going to help you. It's not really going to help anyone. If anything, I would say you just have to work out where you stand and then strategize. Think about the best way of dealing with it. Think laterally. Think about different options that you might have. But, make sure that you're putting your energy and efforts into something that's going to be effective, and not something that's just going to waste time or get you nowhere or burn up a lot of your energy. All right, so hopefully this is helpful. I know it's a little bit of a strange topic to talk about, but I thought it would be worth talking about because it's something that I see happen. And if you are going through an audit and you're not enjoying it, I mean, I've never had a client who's enjoyed being audited. And it's a difficult and very unfortunate situation. But, you'll get through it and you'll be okay. And just keep at it. Best of luck.